The holiday season is here, and for the month of December I will be presenting my holiday menu. Don't worry, the Belgian classics will return in January and this menu is still heavily Belgian inspired. Let's dive into the first course, a beautifully delicate pairing of cod, mussels and green asparagus. I begin by thoroughly washing celery to remove any sand or dirt. Once clean, I slice the stalks of celery into fine, thin pieces. I also use the celery leaves. They are full of flavor and I do not want any of that to go to waste. Next, I slice onions in half and remove the skin. I cut them into fine, even half rings. I'm also grating about 30 grams of fresh ginger for a touch of warmth. Since I'm grating the ginger, there's no need to peel it. It's time to clean the mussels. Remember, the mussels are still alive right up until you cook them. Mussels that are closed are good to go, as it costs the mussel energy to keep its shell shut. If you spot any mussels that remain open, are cracked or damaged, toss them. I clean them in cold, fresh water, swirling them around gently and draining and adding new fresh water until the water stays clear. That clears out any sand or grit. I melt a knob of butter in a large pot over low to medium heat. Once it's melted, I add the celery, onion and ginger, along with a smashed stalk of lemongrass. I want to let these vegetables sweat slowly, stirring now and then, making sure the vegetables do not brown. I season lightly with freshly ground pepper and a touch of salt. Just keep in mind that the mussels will release their own salty brine as they steam, so be easy on the salt. Once the vegetables are soft and fragrant, I transfer the mussels straight in the pot. I transfer the pot back to the stove, crank up the heat to high and put the lid on. A kilo of mussels takes about 5 to 6 minutes to cook, but I'm only going to cook them for about 5 minutes, since I will need to reheat the mussels later. To ensure all the mussels cook evenly, I give the pot a good stir once every 90 seconds. Once cooked, for each person I will select about 2 to 3 shells and an extra 2 to 3 mussels and set them aside in the fridge for now. The remaining mussels I will use to create an even more flavorful broth by continuing to cook them on a very low simmer with some extra water for 15 minutes. I've added about half a liter of water here. After cooking, I strain the broth. To further refine this dish, I'm going to turn this flavorful broth into a clear mussel consommé using the egg whites of 3 eggs. Do not throw away the yolks, I will use them later in the dessert. I lightly whisk the egg whites and add them to the warm but no longer hot broth. I whisk the egg and broth mixture and then place it back on the stove and bring it slowly to a boil. You want the broth to simmer as slow as possible for 20 to 25 minutes, so the egg white can capture all the imperfections. Do not touch the broth while simmering. When done, I strain the broth through a cheesecloth and set it aside. The broth is not as clear as I wanted to, but it will be good enough. Everything I've done so far can be done the day before. Let's pretend it is now the next day, so I start by gently reheating my mussel consommé. For the cod, I portion it into 100 gram pieces per person. I'm going to poach it in a fish stock. Bring the stock to a boil, and once boiling, I turn off the heat and gently place the fish into the stock. A full video on how to make a great fish stock is coming soon, so subscribe so you don't miss that video. If you don't have homemade stock, a good quality vegetable stock or even a stock cube will just work fine. A fish is thin and small will be done in 4 to 5 minutes. After 2 minutes in, I also add the mussels to reheat them. With a skimmer, I fish everything out. The asparagus is the easiest part. I'm using small green asparagus tips and start to cut off the bottom ends. I place them in a pot with cold, salted water. And bring them to a boil. Depending on your stovetop, they may be done the moment the water starts boiling, or they may need a minute more. The best way to check for doneness is always to simply taste one. Time to plate in a warm bowl. I place asparagus tips on the bottom, set the poached cod on top, and drain the mussels over the dish. I finish with a small spoon of lumpfish raw because it's much more affordable than the real caviar. For a beautiful presentation, I pour the consommé into a nice teapot and add the broth to the bowl at the table with the guests. Enjoy!